I'm gonna start letting people in.
Okay. Hi and welcome. We'll get started in a couple minutes. Let's give her some time. We will be going live on Facebook, so feel free once we're up and going to share this information. I am Marnese Jackson. I am the Executive Director with the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition. And today's training is going to be focused on energy justice and utility justice. This is just a basic overview of what it is, because it definitely plays a key part in building decarbonization. So we're going to get started in a couple of minutes. Okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Midwest BDC Energy Justice Training, focused on energy justice and utility justice. This is a basic one-on-one training of what energy justice is and utility justice. We will be going live on Facebook, so once we're up and going, please feel free to go to our Facebook page and share this information, and we will be uploading it to our YouTube page, so go ahead and head over there and follow us up on YouTube. Thank you so much, Maggie, for getting us going. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, so today's agenda, we will have welcome and our objective. We'll do some introductions in the chat, so please feel free to introduce yourself, where you're from, what location. We have our standing meeting order. Since we're moving to a more webinar format, just to prevent any Zoom bombing, we would love to make sure that we take your questions in the chat, and if you would love to speak about something, we will give you the opportunity to do so. But we just want to cut down on any Zoom bombing that we have experienced in the past. I'll give you an overview of the agenda, goals, and icebreaker. We'll go into what climate justice is, energy justice, utility justice. What is energy democracy? Of course, there is a shift in energy, and so there's a new way of doing organizing. We'll talk about energy democracy in practice and fighting for energy democracy to make sure that we have an energy sovereign way of doing things. We'll provide some success stories, and then of course talk about building an energy democracy movement. Okay, so we will have any questions for anyone who will have any questions, and at this time, for 1 second, we're going to continue to let people in. And just a reminder, we will be recording this presentation, so hold tight. Okay. And it's nice to see familiar faces and members of Midwest BDC and newcomers. Of course, Maggie's going to put in the chat for you all to become members if you're interested. We also have a monthly orientation where you can get engaged about all the work that we are doing. Okay. So moving forward, today you'll get a basic understanding of energy justice, utility justice, and climate justice. This is something for anyone that can come to get an understanding, regardless of your level of expertise. And just FYI, we're working out the kinks on the end in regards to Facebook. So just give us a second, we'll go live. And if it doesn't happen, don't worry, it will be uploaded to our Facebook and our YouTube for your review. Okay. So we're going to talk about what understanding energy democracy is, the steps to achieve energy democracy, and then also building capacity in marginalized communities. What does that look like, right? And then some success stories, right? Because we want to emulate a lot of these best practices in our local communities and give examples to people who are not familiar with energy justice, utility justice. And so we want to make sure that we provide those success stories. And just FYI, the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition is here to develop and implement equitable strategies to achieve zero emissions from the Midwestern building sector by 2050. We are in these regional priority states: Michigan, Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, Ohio, Missouri, Indiana, and Iowa. And so, yes, Midwest BDC is expanding. We are transitioning. We have announced that we are officially a 501c3, and I am the current executive director. We have a new staff across the different states, but of course, Jacob and Maggie still here. We've been hanging in there, and we have brought on Edward Davis, who's our new director of grants and development. We have Dana Gibson, who's our administrative associate, and we have Terry Cush, who's our operations director. So look for some awesome things that we will be doing. And just a reminder that the Midwest BDC was founded in 2020 to play a leadership role in convening stakeholders and allies around a regional decarbonization strategy. Midwest BDC is the first of its kind to focus on equity as a coalition, to have this regionally focused specific change, theory of change. And so we connect all individuals representing local, state, regional, and national organizations, from local environmental and climate justice advocates to nationally recognized big greens. The diversity is vital in fostering an ecosystem of collaboration and the ability to learn from experts of all facets of the work that we do. So yes, we have all types of members in our coalition. So just FYI, we're working on the kinks on the back end to get in the membership page, but you do have to go through orientation first to do that, okay? So just FYI, we do have a lot of different members in our coalition, but then also we center the work of equity of Black, Brown, Indigenous, and low-income communities. So Maggie is working on the kinks on the back end, so just continue to be patient, but we'd love to know where you are from, where you're located. If you're representing an organization, please let us know. And so, yes, as I said before, we represent all these type of entities, organizations within our coalitional space, and we are expanding. So, as I said before, this is the agenda. We'll go through all of this again for those who just hopped back on, and we will go through a lot of basic climate justice, energy justice, utility justice 101. A lot of people are not used to these terms, so of course I will explain them. Oh, okay. So icebreaker, yes, icebreaker. What is your connection to energy? In the chat, we would love to know, because how did you get here? What brought you here? But what is your connection to energy? For me, my connection to energy is definitely the sun. My family calls me sunshine because actually I really do need the sun. I have seasonal depression, and yesterday in Michigan, it was just so awesome for me because it was very sunny and it was like 50 degrees outside. So I'm looking outside of where I work I need the sun. Okay. It puts me in a different element. And summer is my favorite time of the year. So in the chat, could you please tell us what is your connection to energy? What's going on in the chat? And while the chat is populating, yes, I see energy myself. I see individuals from Earth Justice. Hello, Rebecca. I see Imani. Welcome back, Imani. I see Rachel. I see Dana. I see Catherine. Okay, welcome back. And of course, continue to put that information in the chat because I would love to know, like, what is your connection to energy? Okay, so an understanding of energy democracy. We're going to start there, okay? So communities of color nationwide are beset by human and civil rights violation, okay? I just have to level set that, including disproportionate exposure to pollution, crime, substandard living conditions, and more. So African Americans, for example, live near energy production facilities, including coal-fired power plants, nuclear plants, biomass power plants, and likely to suffer from health impacts from prolonged exposure to smog, lead, asbestos, mercury, arsenic, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen, and so on, right? So with all of this being said, understanding energy democracy is that the people who are hurt by all these different energy producing facilities have to be at the forefront of making these decisions of where our energy comes from, and deciding where our energy production comes from. So that's just the bottom line, okay? And so what is climate justice? Climate justice is the term used for framing global warming as an ethical and political issue rather than one that is purely environmental or physical in nature. This is related to the effects of climate change due to concepts of justice, particularly environmental justice and social justice, by examining issues such as equality, human rights, collective rights, and historical responsibility for climate change. And a fundamental proposition of climate justice is that those who are least responsible for climate change suffers its greatest consequences. So energy justice is one of the central global issues of our time, with profound implications for health and welfare, freedom and security, equity and due process, and technology development and implementation. So energy justice is the grassroots energy agenda supporting communities threatened by polluting energy and waste technologies. Taking direction from grassroots base and the principles of environmental justice, we advocate a clean energy, zero emissions, zero waste future for all. So the principles of environmental justice, for those who haven't read them, and they can be pulled up at ejnet.org, in those principles, and there are a lot of pretty much the framework of how we do that work, we have to move towards the framework of making sure that these polluting facilities, as you see on the screen, are not concentrated in communities that are impacted the most, marginalized communities, usually are Black, Brown, Indigenous, and low-income communities. But then also these communities are the ones who are organized to create that fossil fuel-free agenda, okay? Those fossil fuels, coal, gas, and oil, who are really polluting our communities, causing climate issues, but then also health issues, right? Because when you're ingesting all these polluting things, it will cause you to have health issues. So with energy justice, it allows communities who are threatened by these energy and waste technologies to create a new grassroots agenda of where we should be going. So, of course, we all know now who are affected by energy regulated. So low-income communities across the board play a high proportion of the income on energy. Elderly pay highest proportion of their often fixed incomes and on energy than any other group. African Americans pay highest proportion of their income on energy than any other racial group. Low income communities are more likely to have water shutoffs and electricity shutoffs, thereby depriving them of essential services and too often resulting in dangerous circumstances through alternative heating efforts. For example, an estimated 68% of African Americans live within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant. Many indigenous communities, for example, in Arizona and New Mexico, are situated adjacent to polluting coal-fired plants. And luckily, a lot of these power plants or coal-fired power plants are being retired. Oil refineries, but also more likely to have no electricity. Women are vulnerable to toxins that affect reproductive systems and are typically the caretakers for the people who are ill or impacted. So, of course, women are disproportionately affected, but then also majority low income. And thanks everyone for introducing themselves in the chat. I really appreciate that. And so to move on, utility justice is a key element of housing security and urban justice and a crucial part of strengthening and expanding the environmental justice and energy democracy movements. So back in 2013, the price of utilities had gone up more than 50% since 2000, and 1 in 5 poor renting families nationally missed payments and got shut off notices. And in 2014, there were nearly 45 billion gap between low-income families' actual energy utility bills and bills that would have been affordable. So this 6% of gross household income. So we're spending a lot on, of course, rent, because we know there's a lot of rent hikes going up, but then also majority of our low-income residents are spending a lot on utility bills. Okay. So utility justice is essential for the basic need of water, heat, light, and electricity. The focus is on equitable utility access and other issues affecting low income and communities of color. Utility justice prevent utility shutoffs, protecting utility service for medical vulnerable households, advocating for low income home energy assistance programs like THAW, light heat funds, and knowing your rights to hearing at the division of the public utilities or communities utility consumers' rights. So utility justice affordability is a widespread and severe national crisis. For those who may live across the Midwest, you may have experienced high utility rates, and most people buy their electricity from a utility company. In particular service area, a utility company is granted a monopoly of electricity, meaning that the company is the sole electricity provider. Utilities charge customers whatever rate necessary to cover the cost of service and also provide a reasonable rate of return on investments. So in turn, the utility company is expected to make the necessary investment to provide reliable, low cost power to customers within the service area. So access to electricity is not a luxury. In fact, in many cases, it is necessary for life. And so utility disconnections can be deadly and disproportionately burden on communities of color and low-income households. And why the focus is on marginalized communities, because those communities are all most likely do not get responded to. If depending on the zip code, utility companies do not respond to those shutoffs fast like they do in the suburbs. And so advocates for elimination of utility service disconnections altogether is the focus of utility justice. So no matter what type of energy justice project your organization or the people in your community is doing, it have to have a utility justice framework at the local, state, and regional level, because sometimes utility providers are have a regional focus or have a regional footprint. So having reliable access to electric, gas, and other energy service is a basic necessity, regardless if we don't like gas, because we want them to transition off of gas fast. However, with those utility shutoffs, a lot of people don't even have access to that, and which says that gas isn't reliable, which is the narrative that a lot of utility providers like to push. So now with utility justice, we have to make sure that the corporations are transparent and held accountable, and stopping shutoffs, because it's a deadly thing. So public utilities commissions or public service commissions. Okay. Public service commissions, PUCs or PSCs, are other utility agencies holding power over the decisions related to the energy that powers our homes and businesses, right? So they are supposed to be the ones that regulate the utility providers, but it depends on your utility PSC, right? Sometimes they are appointed, sometimes they are elected, but the governor usually are the ones who are appointing them. And so if you do not have a friendly governor, right, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you sit on, okay, sometimes, because I have seen our Democrat friends really support not clean energy options, okay? So you have to really, as advocates, really get at the forefront of who is when someone is getting elected. And sometimes we just don't have the power to do so, because if you're electing someone who's not pro clean energy, a lot of this really goes out the window. So usually the PUCs and PSCs are they are setting the rates and ensuring that utilities provide adequate and reliable service to customers, authorizing and overseeing investments in energy resources, such as the power plants, reviewing and approving utility resources plans, regulating private investor-owned dirty gas, electric, telephone, water, or private sewage companies. So they're the ones who regulate them, or supposed to regulate them. And to be quite honest, because I'm going to always be honest, you may not get the outcome that you may like. And thanks so much, Maggie, for putting my information in the chat. I saw that. Okay. And don't worry, everybody will get access to these slides and the recording. So having reliable access to electric, gas, and other energy services is a basic necessity. And we all believe a right for all people. So knowing how to work with the change, the way your energy company set standards, is important for getting equity into your community, and some strategies of engagement. So distributed generation, of course, it has to be environmentally friendly and community controlled. And with that, this is also distributed energy, and it means that the power you receive comes from a source that is at or close to your home or building, like solar panels on a home or a small wind turbine located a few miles away. It is different from other energy sources because it is not far away, like a coal-fired power plant, which uses a lot of electricity over the wires to get it to the building or home that it is powered. This type of distribution tends to be more environmentally friendly, and it is community control. And that's the goal of utility and energy justice, that it is controlled by the community. So some other strategies of engagement and understanding is net metering, which is the amount of energy that is extra is transferred back to the power grid and is credited to the customer's bill. It creates a net of profit for the people who own the solar panels, okay? And so net metering means that a home or business has installed a renewable energy source, solar panels, for example, that are connected to the public utilities power grid. And the solar panels or wind turbines, for example, may create surplus or extra money that is above and beyond what the home or business use, right? So when this happens, the amount of energy that is extra is transferred back to the power grid and is created to the customer's bills, which creates a net of profit for people who own the panels. So unfortunately, in many states, a lot of people do not have adequate utility net metering policies, because the governor or the PSCs or the powers that be who regulates do not allow it, because they want the money to go back into the pocket. So this is unfortunate. So there are different ways where you can strategize against utility, strategize for better net metering policies. However, it's going to be really hard, because once again, utilities want the money to go back into the utilities pockets. Okay, so hold on for 1 second, because I'm getting a notice that my internet quality is going low. So hold on just for a second. Just make sure I'm good and connect to my hotspot. Okay, so I am going to, so energy democracy, just to go back, not something you've been fed to think about it, but democracy, when we think about that, and this is a question for you in the chat, what does that look like? Because we can't get to energy democracy if we don't know what the basic democracy is. So what does democracy look to you? And we can just look at it from a political standpoint, so we can get to the energy democracy. And I would love, if anybody would like to come off of mute, we can invite you to, you just have to raise your hand. Just say, what does democracy mean to you? And anybody can do it. Just raise your hand so I can allow you to come up and speak. Nobody wants to talk? Okay, so for me, democracy looks like a place where people can be a part of the political process as a whole, from the local, state, and federal, and that it doesn't have to be so much red tape to get involved within the political process. Democracy looks like that that individuals who are not elected officials are able to hold elected officials accountable for things that may not be right. Democracy also looks like it should be simplified. It shouldn't be so hard to get things done or passed. I'm going to just say locally, or it shouldn't be hard to get involved in the political process. It should be something simple that a 5-year-old would say, hey, democracy, that's what that looks like, right? It shouldn't be like some type of mystery thing, but of course, I would love to hear your thoughts. Okay. Well, I'm going to keep going. Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Would you like to talk, Nancy? Okay, you should be allowed to talk now.
Right. Hi. I just want to say, for me, democracy is like everybody having a voice in decision making, without exclusions and without people being left out of the table. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And that's just, I mean, simple. Everybody's a part of the process. Like, but I think it's hard because I think some people may feel that they're not able to be a part of the process. So people are participatory. Thank you, Trish. So So of course, energy democracy is still in the formation stages. Energy democracy is definitely growing amongst the environmental and climate justice movement. So it is attempting to like move forward in a lot of these different movements, and there's a lot of different case studies, but energy democracy is rooted in the longstanding social and environmental justice movements. It's definitely a key component of evolving economic democracy in the movement, right? So there's an economic component to it. It's going beyond the simplistic transition to 100% renewables, right? Of course, we want to do that framework, but it offers a deeper understanding of the cultural, political, economic, and social dimensions of climate change problem, right? The growing energy democracy movement is definitely very important now, as you know, we continue to have a lot of rate hikes. This is definitely when we first had the 2015 Paris Agreement, that we had to definitely reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Energy democracy addresses the challenges that the climate and environmental justice movement at a broader level, because it also incorporates social and economic justice. So democracy is leaders who are or can be held accountable to meet people's needs. Thank you. Thank you, Aprili. I like more cooperative approaches. Democracy is very majority rule. And thank you so much for that thought, because I think when you say democracy, it can also terminology, we have to think about the terminologies that's being used, and people have different thoughts on terminology, but I do like the fact that Aprili lifted up cooperatives, because that's a way to move towards energy and utility justice. So energy democracy is a political, economic, social, and cultural concept that merges the technical energy transition with a strengthening of democracy and public participation. The concept is also connected with ongoing decentralization of energy systems, with energy efficiency and renewable energy being used as the strengthening local energy ownership. So with new green technologies available, this transition is having more like what Aprili was talking about, more renewable energy cooperatives at the municipal level, community-owned power stations, community solar, to replace the bigger power corporations. So that's what that looks like. And so an energy transition can only occur if there is a decisive shift in the power towards workers, communities, and the public energy democracy. So, chat questions. Are there any questions in the chat? And I'm going to go there. Can you speak to different types of utilities and which structures are more amenable to reaching utility justice? Yes, I am going to get to that, Rachel. So I'm going to answer that live soon. So what does it mean to get real about climate change and take back control of our energy resources? So this is a question for you. What does that look like to you? What does it mean to get real about climate change and take back control of energy resources? I think one, we have to first think about climate change, that it can, of course, happen to me and that it is happening, that we have to, one, manage our own practices and how we contribute to climate change. Yes, we all cannot switch to electric vehicles, right? Maybe we can take a walk, or maybe we can carpool to eliminate a lot of the travel that we have to do, right? Maybe we can get involved or testify at the Public Service Commission meeting. Like, there's always something that we can do. Maybe we can definitely do local advocacy against our local utility, because actually coming together, in my opinion, okay, we have to really come together with these movements in our localities to hold our Public Service Commission more accountable for more cleaner energy options. So if there's local campaigns, the power is in with the people. So I would love to hear from you, because, you know, if we're going to talk about utility justice, we have to also talk about like what we're going to do about it, right? So moving our grid towards a more renewable energy composition. Yes. And another question is, why won't our current renewable energy solutions achieve a true energy democracy? Well, for me, that would look like, because our current renewable energy solutions, if the power was within the utility space, they're still going to be the one benefiting from it. So yes, they can all switch over to solar, provide solar, and I have seen a lot of solar farms that my local utility put up, but who's really benefiting from that in the local community? So if they have it set up that way, they will continue to benefit from it. So true energy democracy is where community and people are benefiting from the energy. So that's what it would look like for me. So with this shift, you know, with energy democracy movement, it implies a profound shift in how we think about and relate to energy. And energy is essential enabler of human activity, from producing the essentials of life, transportation, communication, to creative arts. We need our energy and we can't survive without it. And so in that light, given the essential threat of climate change that is here right now, the new energy paradigm shift must address three major aspects of our energy system. It has to have a relationship to the environment, it has to have social justice, and we have to have a new energy economy. And so environmental energy democracy emphasizes that the core values and related strategies need to protect Earth's species. It seeks to find the historical and cultural making of our own energy systems, life sustainability, and relying on the principles from the traditional practices of people who have been here. And I'm talking about our indigenous brothers and sisters. So we have to rely on those practices. And then also we have to start to move away from the extractions of our resources, right? So with this shifts, it calls for us reducing human footprint, reducing waste, reducing energy use as a key part of this ecosystem. So when I say reducing waste, we spend a lot on a lot of stuff, a lot of food. So we have to kind of switch up how we do things, so we won't continue to contribute to that. Social justice within this energy democracy, it presents a new social justice shift. We recognize that fossil fuels economy and of climate change see that, of course, the threat is like a lot, right? And it's getting hit. We're getting hit daily with economic, health, and social justice challenges within vulnerable communities. And so with this energy democracy shift, it lifts up the lived experiences of low-income communities and communities of color to reverse the impact and to design an alternative energy system to fossil fuels. And then lastly, with the economic part, energy democracy sees renewable energies resources as enabling a new alternative economic regenerative economy versus extractive one, that builds an economic system that communities are not reliant on the system that we're currently on, right? And it's more regenerative when we're using more of a cooperative model for our energy. Well, no, apparently I don't think you're preaching to the choir, because I think all information is good information, and sometimes we all just needs to be reminded that that we have to continue to do this shift, right? So we have to move from that extractive economy, that where the government, private companies are not exploiting where we get our energy resources from, but we're also moving to a more people-centered people point of view, moving away from that capitalistic point of view to a more and I don't even want to say socialist, but it's just more community, right? Because there could be an argument that socialism may not work as well. So we have to find something that fits everyone, but that doesn't perpetuate the exploitation of people. And we know capitalism has done that. And so within this new model, it's more centralized energy model, where we have big solar plantations, and I don't even like to use that word, but that's kind of like what's being used, that is centered towards more community owned, and we decentralize where we are community based and the ownership is on the community. Okay. Checking my hotspot again. What's going on outside? Okay. So energy democracy suggests that energy democracy is a human right issue and examines the indigenous notion of commons as a cultural framework for rebuilding our economy into one in which natural and human resources are respected, protected, and equally shared. So in practice, the commons, when we create that, we have just transitioned our Power We campaign. We have energy through local energy equity, base building and leadership development for energy democracy, organizing for energy democracy and rural electric cooperatives, and then bringing that to the municipal level. So fighting for democracy, it is no longer tolerable or affordable to ignore the human and environmental cost that is caused by these fossil fuel economies. And so instituting energy commons governance is got to recognize that energy is in reality the transformation of vast array of natural interactions, okay, in our society to use. So human communities are important, and we have to look at this at a more humanistic, where we have a interdependence relationship on earth, energy, and people. So even like people, I like this, people don't like bees because they're afraid that they're going to sting them, but we have to be interdependent on just not just people, the whole ecosystem, right? So we have to look at energy, people, things differently versus it being so separate. So when you move towards energy commons, you align with the human rights framework. You view energy as service. You incorporate scale and diversity. You acknowledge the rights of nature, and you create a viable energy democracy. So with Just Transition is a framework for a fair shift to an economy that is ecologically sustainable and is equitable and just for all of its members. And so Just Transition framework is for a shift to economy that is ecologically sustainable and is equitable and just for all its members. So after centuries of, capitalism, profit-driven, growth-dependent industrial economy, an economy based on extracting resources for, gain, we have to transition, because if we don't, at the expense of all of our natural resources, the earth will, of course, be at impact of it. And yes. So, for example, with Climate Justice Alliance, they launched Our Power We campaign, where they strategize all these different buckets to have a livable environment. And so it's shifting from the dirty energy to clean energy power, from building highways to expanding public transit, from incinerators and landfills to zero waste, from industrial food systems to food sovereignty, more urban gardens and things of that nature. Because, you know, our food quality is just really different nowadays, but it's also aligning workers, environmental justice communities, tenant rights groups, environmental faith, student reliance practitioners, all people, Black, brown, queer, and transgender people in this part, because we are all impacted differently by these issues due to the harmful impacts of the extractive economy. So, and an example with the California Environmental Justice Alliance, they focus on state policy framework for financial and technical resources for the communities that were overburdened by the industrialization in California. And they have a high rate of high utility costs as well. But they created some green zones, which is a framework for equitable energy policies by infusing impacted communities with the financial and technical assistance needed for development of local renewable energy resources. And so this was also women-led, and they did sponsor legislation called Solar for All. I think a lot of us may know about that, which called for a massive transformation of energy systems away from the natural gas power plants. And so this was the first ever alliance bill that was instituted in California. And California is definitely one of the pioneers to move towards more renewable energy. And so with their policy framework locally, they prioritize, of course, communities for public investment. They establish community governance and democratic decision-making processes. So I just want to note that when we have our utopia, when we want to create our whole new system, we have to make sure that we do not perpetuate the same type of thing that we are moving away from. Because when we create community government, sometimes we emulate what the powers that be does, right? Because we gain some power, right? So we just have to continue to level set when you bring different community people in to do this different type of framework of cooperatives, community decision making, that we don't perpetuate the same harms that we're trying to move away from. So of course they had to acknowledge that there's a lot of barriers when you move into more energy democracy, community owned cooperative models, that, you know, some people may create divisions. Sometimes there's a lot of financial costs, so you have to go back and do your homework, do your assessments every year if you did like a community solar farm, for example. Sometimes there's not a lot of outreach, education, and marketing, and that that needs to be baked into anything that you do: outreach, education, and marketing. And then political will. I can say here in Michigan, I live in Oakland County, we have a Oakland County Climate Action Plan. However, we know that it would have benefited more of the suburbs in the community, because Oakland County is one of the richest counties in Michigan. And so, but we have cities in the middle who are low income communities. And so we knew that it was going to be more of a financial burden on the, luckily you had environmental activists at the table, like, these financial costs is going to hit these communities. So we have to make sure that that's why you center low income communities of color and low income communities first, because the other surrounding cities would have been able to bounce back. So just FYI. And some other success stories, we tend to forget about rural electric cooperatives when we're doing this work, but One Voice is one example of a success story. Energy, they are in Mississippi, which is a nonprofit civic engagement organization focused on building support and active participation across Mississippi, and getting involved in the environmental climate justice movement. And so it has an electric cooperative leadership movement. And so they are certified to do more community level, municipal level, and they call them munis at the local level. I'm just gonna point this out really quick that I keep getting this notice that my internet is slow. So Maggie, just let me know if I'm sounding weird because I'm switching to my hotspot just to make sure, but it keeps bouncing back and forth. So if I'm sounding like lagging, just let me know. Okay, I just want to point that out there just in case we get disconnected. I just want to put that out there, but we're almost done. So the Institute for Local Energy Reliance defines energy democracy as an energy system that is democratic, where decisions are made by users of the energy. Just so FYI. Okay, thank you, Maggie. So with that, they created a phase of listening to craft an electric cooperative leadership institute, and then they created election campaigns. So this is just another way, if you wanted to create an energy democracy framework, you can, of course, have your listening sessions. I would say bake in listening sessions all of the time, okay? Because you don't, you want to get, that's just basic community organizing. So another example is the local Clean Energy Alliance in Bay Area, which has the largest energy coalition. It has a lot of members, including a lot of diverse members, energy, business, social equity, community groups in Bay Area, California. And so the Alliance promotes the development of local decentralized system, which integrates energy demand reduction and local renewable energy. And so the community choice, they created a program that will give local power, economic development benefits, environmental health, and new local energy programs to help lower utility rates. So with that, the community choice will enable cities and communities to choose where the energy, electricity come from in their homes and businesses. And it's also a way to reduce, of course, greenhouse gas emissions. So another example of bringing more power to the people, Cooperation Jackson in Mississippi as well, is building a solidarity economy anchor in cooperatives and other types of worker-owned self-managed enterprises. And so Cooperation Jackson, which is in Jackson, Mississippi, installed solar panels on the Lumumba Center and are operating as a solar green hub. And this was the first step to making the facility more carbon neutral and waste free. And so they want to move away from the extractive economy. And so they are operated by solars, and so they can be more sustainable and more off the grid. And so this is what it looks like in Jackson, Mississippi. And this is some of the members of Cooperation Jackson. Okay. And then, so we have Solidarity here in Highland Park, Michigan. And so just a little bit of history about Solidarity in Highland Park, which is like a city within Detroit, Michigan. And so energy democracy is like the idea that people most impacted by energy decisions should have the greatest say in shaping them. And so in Highland Park, their streetlights were repossessed, which impacts, of course, you know, their health, their economic opportunities, some negative impacts of safety within the city. And so they decided to become more self-reliant with having their campaign against DTE Energy, who repossessed their streetlights. And so they created their own solar lights within Highland Park, which was some community organizing they had door-to-door campaigns, and of course DTE is an investor-owned monopoly utility that controls southeastern Michigan, and replaced their 1,000 streetlights from Highland Park because they were in debt $4 million. And so, and with that being said, the CEO compensation is $5.4 million. Must be nice, right? But hey, they repossessed their streetlights, and so they decided to get together and create Solidarity, the organization. And so now Solidarity has been a key organizing organization against DTE Energy with the DTE Work For Me campaign, which is definitely a statewide initiative with here in Michigan. And so with the shut off of those electric, with those streetlights, they saw that their electric bills became higher, which I thought was really different. And it was good news to know for me, because I'm like, I didn't see the correlation between streetlights and then also energy burdens in your house. So that was something new that I learned. And then also, they're a membership organization. They created their own governance structure to make sure that the members of the board were members of the Highland Park community, and that they had a leadership that also understood the mission and wanted to carry the organization forward with their solar purchasing program. So look Solidarity up. They are also a member of the Midwest BDC as well. And so another example of energy democracy is the Red Cloud Renewable Energy Center in Pine Ridge of North Dakota, which is an indigenous led on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And it's one of its kind educational facility where the tribes from all over can receive hands-on training on renewable energy appliances from their fellow indigenous trainers. So and the tribal members receive training and they can become certified in these different areas. So that is the facility on the reservation, but then also these are some of the workers. So they started the organization, their production, and they're employing within their community. So for me, that's what energy democracy looks like. So become energy sovereign, you have to have equity and social and environmental justice. You have the energy democracy, or in other terms, cooperatives, community health and resilience, which will provide economic growth and workforce development and sustainability and have social safeguards. So I want to expand on that, having assessments of what's working and what's not working so you can improve the different processes. And so with energy, for energy sovereign future, you have to prioritize, of course, these 6 things, but it's also a fundamental thing baked into your framework. And so energy sovereignty is in contrast to energy security, which is focused on guaranteeing an abundant energy for running an economy, regardless of where the energy comes from and who has control of it. Energy sovereignty is you're sovereign from the current system that we're on. So I think people say you're off the grid. That's pretty much it, sums it up. You're away from the system that we're currently are part of. And you're creating your own system, but then it also has to have health, community, sustainable, clean, and efficient energy system, community resilience, and livability. So it's focused more on the community. The community is creating and dictating the terms. And then it's a different way to look at things politically and institutionally, where our energy systems come from. And that's why I asked in the beginning, what does democracy look like? Because we have this idea from political standpoint, what does that look like? But I think we have to revision or transform how we think things should look in our society, just because that's how it is now. But then also the benefits of energy sovereignty is its self-determination, community leadership and ownership. The models are designed for public good. And with the economic development, it's affordable, right? We want to be able to afford our utility bills and prevent utility shutoffs. The wealth remains in the community, and that does not mean we perpetuate exploitation of capitalism that we're so used to. The wealth is in the community, that we're going to use those funds to continue to build up the community. It's local, it's equitable, and it's sustainable. So the steps to achieve that, you have to so the steps to achieve that, so I'll put the slide before that, but yes, you have to just make sure that it's, I'm gonna go back, that you have to have energy justice, environmental justice, you have to have energy democracy, community health and resilience, you have to have economic growth and workforce development and sustainability, and have social safeguards. So these are like the steps to getting there. So building this movement, we have to consider also globally that it has to be multicultural, it has to be multidimensional, and it has to be a big tent. Like we have to look at everyone. That's what that means. We have to consider all the legal challenges and organize for resistance, because there's always going to be resistance when you're fighting for social change, and also build in alternatives. So we have to also, like I said, reimagining like the community where we come from, that is reliable, that urban neighborhoods are generating their own solar energy, that we're getting our food from somewhere from the community. That's what energy liberation, that's what environmental justice looks like, versus corporations, because we never know what we're going to get with that. So when we're thinking about economic, environmental equity, social utility, and energy justice, it has to be people powered led, and it takes a lot to organize that. However, it of course can be done. So we shouldn't have to decide if we're going to choose to pay this or pay that. And so that's an injustice all around. Okay, so when we're thinking about this, we shouldn't have to do that. So we have to create our own way if we feel like we have to choose and there is something wrong. So these are some of the books that I've been reading, have access to, but then The Power to the People, Fueling the Revolution for Energy Justice. There's also something that the NAACP provides, and they have their own toolkits around energy justice and energy democracy. So I say, pick up these books, look up these publications, and of course, in the follow-up, I would send the links to all of this. But then also, Shalana Baker, Revolutionary Power is a good read. And Climate Energy Decoded is also definitely a good read for you. Let's see. Coming up, we have some upcoming trainings that's going to be focused on health and building decarbonization coming up. And of course, Maggie will put those in the chat. So my favorite book, Tammy, is definitely Denise Fairchild book, Energy Democracy. I like that book. But yeah, that's one of my favorites. Now I have a copy of it. But please look for our upcoming trainings. Thank you so much for putting that in the chat, Maggie. And of course, you can follow us on Midwest BDC. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn. We're now on Instagram, so go follow us on Instagram. We just got to update the slide. LinkedIn is popping. Facebook is always popping, and we're at MidwestDecarb.org. So, of course, Maggie put all these links in the chat, and we'll follow up. Are there any questions? Yes, we're yes, we're expanding our training program. So of course, if you're looking forward to see any trainings, just let us know and we'll do our best to get it out there, and get what you need. But thank you all for coming. And have a good Thursday and happy February and Black History Month to you all. Don't worry, we will send a training feedback form out to you. And then, of course, we will send all the links, recordings, and everything for you. Have a wonderful day.